Well, it seems I was right. After the latest chapters of One Piece, it became clear that Luffy's final power will be the ability to share his Nika mode with all his allies. In this case, I honestly don't know if I like being right, but it's inevitable that I am. So yes, we're going to have an ending to One Piece, very similar to Naruto, when he shared Kurama's cloak with all his allies during the 4th Ninja War. Let's understand how Oda has been building the story for this to happen, and talk about the consequences of it now. The first thing we need to highlight here is the origin of the legend of the Sun God Nika. The Sun God was first mentioned back during the Skypiea arc, when the people of the Sky Island were performing a sacrificial ritual in which they intended to sacrifice a woman. Which I seriously doubt, right? I honestly don't believe that the Sun God we know would truly want someone to be killed in his name. Or maybe that's part of the confusion and doubt surrounding the benevolence of Nika, just like we saw in Elbaf, when Nika is called both the god of liberation and the god of destruction, depending on the belief and perspective of each person. Anyway, just something for us to reflect on here. The real point is that it was only through Who's Who, back in the Wano arc, that we heard about this god again. And this is the most important part for this video. During his fight against Jinbe, Who's Who says the following: apparently, there was a figure to whom slaves used to pray in the distant past, a legendary warrior they believed would one day set them free. This sentence can be interpreted literally, with the Sun God Nika freeing the slaves from captivity. But there's also a second possible interpretation, that Nika would bring freedom to others through his own power, transforming the people around him into beings as free as Nika himself, someone who achieved ultimate freedom in this world through his abilities. So this line could very well, and I strongly believe it is a way for Oda to suggest that the way Nika freed people in the past, and how Luffy will do the same, is by sharing his own powers with them. And how could this be possible? Very simply, and the answer has already been given to us. In the Elbaf arc, we discovered that Emu shares parts of her power with the Gorosei and the Holy Knights, which includes immortality, teleportation, telepathic communication, etc. That alone would be enough reason to justify Luffy being able to do the same. But in the latest chapters, it's been thrown in our faces more clearly than ever. We witnessed Emu, after possessing the body of the Holy Knight Gunko, create a true army by possessing the body of the giant, including Dory and Broggy, to take over the country. Actually, just to explain it better, Emu used an ability called Domi Reverse, which can be translated as Reverse Domain, where she summons a magic circle and replaces the original version of a target with a demonic version complete with horns, wings, and a colossally larger form than their original selves. We don't yet know all the details of this ability, but it may really be that there's a domain, a parallel reality, where demonic versions of all the characters we know reside. For those who have watched Solo Leveling, it's similar to the Eternal Sleep World, a parallel dimension where all of Sung Jinwoo's shadow soldiers reside when they're not being summoned into the human world. And for anyone looking for another reference, the horror film Us also explores this idea of an underworld, a parallel dimension to our own, where evil versions of ourselves exist and rise to the surface to haunt us. If you haven't seen it, that movie is definitely worth watching. So even though we haven't seen it yet, it's possible that such a parallel dimension exists, where the original versions of the GBF giants were sent. For now, we still don't know the name of Emu's devil fruit, so all we have are theories, and I want to share a few of them with you. For example, there's the Abyss fruit, and then there's the Void fruit, one of my personal favorites. It symbolizes the void, which is represented by Emu the Void Century, the empty throne, and even the idea of the vacuum of space itself. Several characters in One Piece reference different celestial bodies, like the Gorosei and the ancient weapons representing planets in the solar system, Nika representing the sun, and Blackbeard likely representing the moon, so Emu could represent the void, or dark matter, that exists in space. There's also the theory of the devil fruit, which is literally translated as Akuma no Mi, but to avoid redundancy, maybe we could imagine the following name, Aku no Mi, as a sort of abbreviation of Akuma. I find this name really interesting, especially because it makes a great reference to the villain from Samurai Jack, named Aku. That villain's name comes from a Japanese folklore demon, and is also derived from the word Akuma. What's even more striking about that villain is that he has a mostly black silhouette appearance, very similar to how Emu has only been shown as a black silhouette so far. And here's my fear, guys, that Emu's true form may have already been revealed from the beginning, and that she really is this giant shadowy figure we've always seen. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but they've released an official Emu plush toy, which is basically just that black silhouette we know. So I don't know if the merchandising team just got tired of waiting for Oda and decided to start selling toys before knowing the character's real appearance, or if that shadowy form has always been Emu's true appearance, just like Aku from Samurai Jack is, at least visually, mostly a giant black silhouette. And on top of that, Aku the villain from Samurai Jack also has the ability, believe it or not, to freely transform his body into all sorts of shapes and forms, including the form of an Eastern dragon, which Oda really likes, as well as even more bizarre shapes. That's exactly like what we see Emu do, when she molds her body into a grotesque form to try and stop Sabo from escaping in Mariejois. Anyway, I think Akunomi is a great name, but we can also think about other variants of that name, like Rito Ritonomi, model Akuma, or Rito Ritonomi, model Madden. Or in the worst case scenario, Imu's Akuma Nomi doesn't have a proper name at all, just like it seems to be the case with the Gorosei, for example. When the Gorosei appeared in Egghead, we didn't get the full names of their Akuma Nomi, just the names of the mythical creatures they represent. That's probably because they were the first users of those powers, and since they were or still are virtually immortal, their powers were never channeled into fruit form, and thus never officially catalogued with specific names. So when we finally get Imu's official introduction in the story, maybe Oda won't even give her devil fruit a proper name. He might just show an image of Imu with a title card that simply says Akuma. Now that would be cool, right? But anyway, having talked about the name, let's move on to the next point. The point is that Imu was able to create an army of demonic giants, and I strongly believe she could do the same thing to Luffy as well, thus creating an evil version of Nika. This idea is even mentioned in the legend from Elbaf, which brings up the duality of Nika's benevolence and destructiveness. And actually, I want to make another video about this later, because this could very well end up being the reason for the destruction of Fishman Island. But hold on guys, save that topic, because we'll dive deeper into it in another video. The point is, well, there are many points, right? The point is that Imu is revealing herself to be an increasingly powerful existence, to the point of being able to possess and control the bodies of other people, whether through reverse domain like she did with the giants, or through direct possession like she did with Gunko's body. Don't forget this, everyone. While Imu did control the giants, they at least still seem to be able to speak for themselves. But in Gunko's case, that was full-on direct control by Imu, and maybe what explains the difference is that the Holy Knights have a special mark on their bodies, one that grants them immortality and other abilities bestowed by Imu. So perhaps because they've already made this pact, Imu is able to access and control their bodies more directly and easily than she can with the giants. Anyway, the fact that Imu is capable of creating a real army of demons gives us even more reason to believe that Luffy will be able to do the same. After all, we're talking about two diametrically opposed figures here, Imu, who represents absolute control over others, and Nika, who represents absolute freedom for others. Only ultimate freedom can stand against absolute control. That's why Luffy will be able to grant those around him the powers of Nika as well. Of course guys, it's not necessarily because Imu can do this that Luffy must be able to do the same, but in an opposite way. One doesn't cause the other, but Imu's powers still serve as a precedent that opens the door in the One Piece world for Luffy to do something similar, only with the opposite intent. This is so clearly going to happen that, during Broggy's transformation into a demon, he says he feels like he could do anything in the world. Those are literally the same words Luffy used when he awakened the Nika form. See the parallel, everyone? The problem is that Broggy doesn't realize that what he's experiencing is only a false sense of freedom, and the one who's going to show him what true freedom really is will be Luffy. But I don't think that will happen just yet in Elbaf, okay? I think it's something that'll come later, when the One Piece World War finally reaches Mariejois. Only when Luffy arrives with his ship, his fleet of allies, his whole crew and everyone else, then maybe we'll finally witness people transforming into Nika to fight against Imu's demon army. Just imagine it guys, all the demons up in Mariejois, at the top of the red line, and then down below, Luffy and his entire fleet transformed into Nika. We'd see that epic scene, angels and demons, a final confrontation, ready to flip everything upside down because Imu is about to be dethroned. Just pure visual madness. Now, my fear when this moment happens is probably the same as yours, that all of it will turn into a massive joke. Everyone turning into Nika, laughing, pulling faces and making jokes left and right. And part of the seriousness and epic tone that a moment like this should have will instead become a full-blown Looney Tunes show, with everyone stretching and goofing around. Mark my words guys, this is gonna happen. Another common fear I see people mention is that this could end up completely cheapening the Nika form and Luffy, right? That he'd stop being special, since he'd no longer be the only one with a unique transformation in the series. And yes, that will happen. But we have to remember that this fits perfectly with the theme of the Sun God. The Sun God exists to grant freedom to others, not just through his own actions, but by inspiring others to become his allies. In fact, this reminds me of Mihawk's line about Luffy having the most terrifying power in the world, the power to turn everyone around him into his allies. So if we take Mihawk's words literally, maybe Luffy will literally transform the people around him into his allies by sharing his Nika form with them. If Emu can do this through possession and direct control over others' bodies, turning those people into her minions, then Luffy will also be capable of doing the same, but in a way that brings freedom, not control. Let's also remember that the sun was made to illuminate the entire world, just like Nika was born to liberate that same world. And what better way for Nika to shine light over the world of One Piece than by sharing his own power? A third valid concern that some people raise is how the Nika form might end up stripping other characters of their individuality. Each member of the Straw Hat crew has a very distinct fighting style, so if everyone becomes a version of Nika, will they all just start stretching and laughing like Luffy? But personally, I don't think this will be such a major issue. First, because this will likely be just a temporary form that Oda gives to the crew and others, rather than something permanent that lasts throughout the entire final arc of One Piece. And second, because Oda can easily keep each character's identity intact by blending their unique traits with the powers of Nika. So we might see Narumi stretching her staff, Usopp stretching his slingshot to insane lengths. Imagine that thing reaching halfway across the world. We'll see Sanji stretching his legs to keep doing his signature kicks, and Zoro stretching his swords. In fact, there's even that official image drawn by Oda showing Zoro with the Gomu Gomu abilities, which was probably Oda warming up his hand to eventually draw Zoro and all the Straw Hats with Luffy's Gear 5 powers. A lot of people also complained about Bonnie being able to emulate the Nika form, and I genuinely think that was a test Oda used to warm the audience up for what's really coming in One Piece. But I personally feel that Bonnie's case is more about her specifically, since the biggest issue there was the absolutely ridiculous interpretive stretch Oda had to make to justify her having the Nika form too. So the problem is less about the Nika form being cheapened, and more about how Bonnie got it. The real overuse or banalization of the Nika form is what's coming now. Stayed till the end and enjoyed the video? Then drop your theories in the comments below. Your comment is super important for the video's engagement. Don't forget to like the video, and check your subscription to the channel. And now you can watch the latest One Piece videos that just dropped on the channel by clicking the ones that are about to show up on your screen. Cool? See you next time. Bye!